What is up, guys? Back with another video, and today we are reading r/NuclearRevenge. I am so glad to be back to this subreddit. It's a lot of fun, and today we're gonna read one of the longest and most intense stories I've probably ever read, with one of the biggest shock endings. So let's not waste any more time and let's get right in the story. See you on the other side. Repost. Teacher bullies my dad, bullies my bro, gets nuked. Triple XL story, TLDR at the end. The town where this happened is a small one, and the school I went to is a 70-year-old school. My granddad and my dad are also alumni of the school. Let me just start off by saying that alumni of the school are really successful, and the school has a long history of being charitable and also offers some amazing retirement benefits to teachers depending on how long they work there. My granddad donated some of his property to the school when it was being constructed, and he was an advisor and part of the school board in this time. The school was an all-boys school up to 1996, where they had their first co-ed class, and is now full co-ed. The school also had all classes from kindergarten to high school split in two buildings. The first house, kindergarten to 5th grade, the other had classrooms for 6th grade to 12th grade. Part 1. Teacher versus Dad. The incident. Said teacher, we're going to call MD, and my dad's math teacher when he started high school. She was a young woman just finishing her teaching degree and was masters in math and chemistry. At that point, she was the most qualified teacher the school had. Unfortunately, MD was a nasty person. She walked into class and students were expected to be sitting in ready mode, back straight, legs together, and hands on their lap, with only one needed textbook and a pencil to take notes on the margins. The class was expected to greet her with good morning/afternoon when she walked in, and she assigned tons of weekend homework. She would simply stop teaching for an entire hour of class if someone spoke without having asked to speak. You couldn't drink water without her permission, couldn't go to the restroom unless she finally saw your hand and asked you to speak. There were multiple cases of people complaining that against her, but with her being the most qualified teacher there, the school board didn't take action. Instead, they supported her by saying that this would help discipline the students. But this is not even the beginning of it. Her exams were incredibly hard, and with the classes being full of teenage boys, they would talk, and even one of them doing so would cause her to stop teaching and not teach until next class. She would then lecture them on a different topic, completely skipping the part of chemistry. Suffice to say, before the finals, the entire class was in a panic state, trying to self-study enough to at least pass the class. My dad ended up with a 41. Our education system said you failed a class if you had under 40%, so he was relieved that he passed. But when he went through his answer sheet, my dad noticed that his totaling was incorrect, and that he in fact had a 49 on the test. He raised his hand, and about after 5 minutes or so of him just sitting in his seat calmly with his hand raised, he was called on by MD, asked what the problem was. Dad told her that there was a totaling mistake in the final, and that he actually had a 49. This somehow offended her. Instead of calling him forth and checking his paper, MD decided that it was simply impossible for her, a master's in math, to make a mistake in something as simple as addition. She waved him off, and my dad was shocked, but she calmly turned to the next person with a question. My dad, on the other hand, was not happy. He walked up from his seat, which was basically considered a crime in class, and put the paper on MD's desk and started totaling his points loudly. MD incredulously watched him do that and was at a loss for words, though when he was done totaling, you could see her face was flushed and she was furious. She looked at him from the paper to my dad, and then back to my paper, and then suddenly, a crude smile appeared on her face. MD: oh, okay, I see the mistake, but this is no excuse for this behavior, and this awards a subtraction of 10 points from your final. The class that was amazed at the first sentence went back to having grim looks, and my dad stood there, jaw dropped that he now had 39 points and failed the class. Instead of responding and making the situation worse, he simply took his final, packed his backpack, and left the classroom. He went and spoke to his granddad, who was on the school board, but he said he couldn't do anything since grades were completely in the hands of the teachers concerned. My dad took a loss and decided that his revenge was not worth the trouble and switched classes. He dropped chem and took up econ, and that was his last interaction he ever had with his teacher. Part 2. Teacher versus my brother and I. My younger brother, B, is 2 years younger than me, and so, when I was in freshman year, starting high school, my younger brother was in 7th grade. We had an auditorium under construction, and the library was newly renovated, so a teacher was assigned to chaperone the younger class students at the library. My younger brother's class, unfortunately, had MD as their chaperone. My dad had specifically instructed me to be very careful around MD, and I was on the outlook, but my younger brother had no idea who he was dealing with. Before summer, our library allows students to take any 2 books of their choice for the break, so when my brother walked past MD to the librarian and was stopped by MD, he was really confused. He had an Indie Byton book, okay, and a copy of Backyard Science Experiments. Both my younger brother and I are really good at science-related topics, and he had been waiting for summer break to do some really cool science experiments at home with me. MD: wait a minute, what book do you have there, B? B: a storybook and a backyard science book, ma'am. MD: what are you gonna do with the backyard science book? Turning to the other library staff. I taught his father, no brains in there. You would have no idea what to do with this book. Leave it for someone who does. And with that, she snatched the book from his hands and walked away, the library staff giving awkward laughs behind her. When he came looking for me, crying, I was furious. I was a really popular guy at school. I won quizzes and debates, and represented the school in national competitions. My friends and I literally had an entire showcase of trophies at school, with our names embossed on it, and most teachers loved us. Man, the vice principal of the school and our group were on first name basis. He chaperoned us to all competitions we represented the school in. But when he told me what happened, I was dumbfounded. I had no idea how to react, but for a moment, I went to the library and got another copy of Backyard Science book to console my brother. But then, we were out for the summer vacation, and I didn't think much of it. Side note, in the summer, we attended the science summit, and my school friends and I won a prize for having the most efficient hydraulic gear-based pulley system and the second fastest chemical race fuel boat. This was before I even took a high school chemistry or physics course. This was announced in the school assembly the first day after summer break. Wow, this guy makes me feel really stupid. When we came back for fall, I had a chem class with MD, the first day of school. This was also right after the assembly, where my group was given the award. So we go to the chem lab, and MD is on the science instructor's desk setting up experiments designed to liberate hydraulic experiments designed to liberate hydrochloric acid fumes in the gas flask. Some moments passed, and we could see that some mistakes had been done. There was no reaction in the mixture. Turns out the zinc granules were impure and rusted, but MD somehow got the idea that turning on the Bunsen burner on full blast would help the experiment. After collecting the gas for about 3 minutes, which is 2.5 minutes too long since hydrochloric acid fumes are toxic if inhaled, she is satisfied. Then she pulls up the flask to show the class how we do the experiment. Cherry on the icing is when she opens the flask and brings it uncomfortably close to the girl beside me. MD: does it smell pungent? The girl awkwardly smells and jerks away. To someone who has no clue, that would be plausible confirmation, but I knew that it was complete horse crap. I could see the girl knew about the pungent fumes and cringed away on reflex. It was not because it was actually pungent. I don't know why I did it, but at that moment I snorted loudly. MD instantly zooms in on me, walking up towards me with her face contorting into an ugly expression. She goes, "Something funny you'd care to share with us?" I knew I messed up, but I was also angry. The person in front of me had bullied my younger brother and my dad. I remembered that, and suddenly all my verbal censors were shut down. Me: you and I both know she didn't smell anything pungent. That experiment you did was just a failure. MD: oh, you think you know better than me? Turning to class: He knows more than me. You know what? I'll step down. Why don't you teach the class, Mr. Nicholas Fiend? Me. Oh, absolutely. To the absolute shock of everyone watching, I walk up to the podium, and while maintaining eye contact with MD, first thing to remember, class, turn to experiment 1 of your lab textbook. Read the warnings. The gas is pungent and poison. MD. How dare you? Has no one taught you manners? This is no roadside shack, and you would do well to remember that, else you're gonna have a couple broken bones. This was in a different language, but if you want the exact translations, it was, I'll break your limbs and feed them to you. She's absolutely furious, grabs me by my hands, and proceeds to drag me to the principal's office. On the way there, we cross the vice principal's office, and he sees MD dragging me away and runs out. VP, what's going on here? Before I could say anything, MD starts ranting to him about how disrespectful and unacceptable my class behavior is, and is heaving by the end of her spiel. The VP gives me a searching look, and then responds with, go back to class, MD. I'll deal with him. We head back to the office, and he offers me a seat and a glass of water. What actually happened in class? He asks with a sigh. I tell him exactly what happened, and once he hears my side of the story, he looks at me incredulously and asks me if I went to the podium and started lecturing the class. I looked up and see the gobsmacked look on VP's normally reserved face. Imagine someone who looks like a male... Oh, that's the name I'm not going to go for. Being completely shocked. I couldn't stop myself. It started with a snicker, which turned into full-blown laughter. I laughed until my stomach hurt and my eyes teared up. To my surprise, VP was also smiling widely at that. He shook his head, and that reserved expression was back. VP, I know what happened there. You had your concern for class safety, but that's no reason for such disruptive behavior. Aside from that, I'm personally going to investigate what happened in that class. And if MD is found intentionally forcing students to inhale harmful chemicals, she will be sacked immediately. Oh, and you're supposed to hand over a written apologies to MD about this behavior. Now get moving. I sighed and headed back to class, and really thought that I had ended MD's career. Oh, how wrong I was. She changed the story so it looked like I had purposely done the experiment wrong, and she was reprimanding that girl for inhaling what could have been harmful chemicals. MD pulled one on me, and had me look like I was just an insolent child who thought he knew everything by reading a chapter of a book. And here I stopped myself. This event was just going head on with a teacher who had been here longer than 35 years. Part 3, Pro Revenge Mode. Now I knew that to help my brother, I needed to get rid of her. My dad knew about what happened in school, and he wanted me not to engage MD. He said it was not worth it, but by now, I was in the game. She had played her card, and it was my turn now. I don't know what made it that she had such a problem with my dad and younger brother. They were quiet and hardworking students. I felt she had something against our family, and I was convinced that my younger brother would have to deal with this problem if I somehow messed up and got expelled or made worse enemies out of MD. This was war, and I had a new plan. I had started to act real sheepish around her, and made it a point to stay back after class and ask questions in the most polite way possible. I was a kid who was guilty of not understanding the plans of elders. I portrayed myself as an amazing student who MD had succeeded in humbling. I slowly but surely made my way into the category best described by the term bootlicker. It hurt me inside to do so, but what I had planned, if this went well, made me lightheaded with anticipation. I was in it to win it. I conceded defeat in a fight to win the war. 2 years later, I'm a junior, and my brother just started high school, and he was taking chem class with MD. I was the highest scorer in chem, and was a pet to MD. She started to like the Nicholas Fiend I had portrayed, and made me a lab assistant for that year. 2 of my best friends knew what I had planned. Everyone else in the class hated me for being teacher's pet and getting straight A's, when the next grade was a B-. Everything was going according to plan. On the first day of class, I replaced her stool, one of the 3-legged ones, with a broken stool. This was supposed to be the first in a series of pranks that would hit her in the day. She came to class and went to take her seat, and boy, she fell. Well, she somehow hit her hand on the wall and cried out. Yep, that must have hurt. But she was definitely overweight, and it couldn't be traced back to me. I smiled on the inside as I rushed to help her back up. I ran and fetched her another chair, and while inside, the freshmen were trying their best not to laugh. When I got back from the room that had extra stools, I walked into the sight of her screaming like a banshee. But what got me furious was that she was screaming at my younger brother. Apparently, she had said something like, "Stupid stools and stupid lab assistant fools," to which my brother had responded with, "It's not my brother's fault that you're too heavy for the stool." Though I loved him for it, he really needed to learn where to come to my aid. But then I didn't do much and simply replaced the chair silently, while silently trying to communicate to my brother to calm down. Nothing else of a concern happened that day, till the time when school was over and the teachers were heading back. Stage 2 was in motion. We heard a loud bang, and immediately a large crowd of students nearby all headed towards the teacher's parking lot. We saw MD's car smoking and her exhaust blown right off. Keep in mind it was an older car, and we decided to block off the exhaust with clay that had hardened over the course of 6 hours on a sunny day. Well, that car had to be towed, and she went home with some other students that day. She didn't show up to school for 2 days after that, but she did show up to school on the third day, which was a half-day school, because our country celebrates Teachers' Day. It's a tradition that the students go to their teachers, current and old, and wish them the best, give them cards, gifts, etc. This was, by far, the most ambitious prank in school that I know of. The 2 days she was absent, we went around telling people to not visit her on Children's Day. It helped a lot that my friends and I were some of the more popular people in school, and with the cool guys and girls agreeing to that, we spread the word and got confirmation that no one from the entire class in my year was going to wish her on Teacher's Day. But what actually happened was that something no one could have expected. I guess it was because we acted so fanatical about it that our classmates spread the word to their friends, and no one, not a single person in high school, went to her on Teacher's Day. It was the most amazing feeling of accomplishment I ever had. She had made the situation for herself by being the nastiest person I've ever seen. It was no surprise that people were fine with doing this to her. For the first time in 70 years in our school, a teacher had not a single well wish on Teacher's Day. Well, things are never perfect, and as it happened, words of what conspired got to her. The next day, I had just set up the lab. The freshmen were getting settled in, and here comes MD. Anger radiating from her in waves. She walks up to me, and I get the hardest slap I've ever gotten in my life right across my face. I hate to admit it, but that left a blue mark on my cheek, and my nose and lips started bleeding. My younger brother, who saw what happening, ran towards me, but my shock slowly subsided, and I smiled a bloody smile that probably scared him. I told him to go get the vice principal. 20 minutes later, I was in the school's emergency room with a nurse wiping my blood and helping me get a cloth to my nose. The vice principal comes in with the principal and 2 cops in tow. They inform me that my parents have been informed and ask me if I would like to talk about it now or when my parents get here. I say that I can answer their questions as soon as my lip is bandaged. So I tell them about the cases of bullying against my brother and I also tell them that she's a really incompetent teacher. I tell the principal that he could check the school averages in science subject, and sure as I guessed, the average score in the national exam, we had physics and biology coming at 92 and 90, with chemistry at a surprising 79. Top that off with assault charges, and she lost her license to teach. 2 years before she retired, and with that lost an amazing retirement benefits that school offered. Her car also had no insurance. Huh? Although that was in the story, that's actually pretty genuine. Why is that in there? That's not all though, and one could ask, what could be worse? Well, consider this. The fall she had off that stool had her go to the hospital for an x-ray of her wrist and hip that she suspected might have been broken. Well, the wrist sure had a hairline fracture, the hip was fine. But well, the x-ray showed another thing. I don't think it's normal for anyone to laugh when someone is diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, but I did. Also, I later met up with the only living family member, her nephew, who had long cut all contact with her, but had been contacted by the police in the hospital. This is where I found out the truth. Well, I never could have guessed it. What I found out, MD's mom was my great-granddad's niece. What? through my great-granddad's younger brother, who had stolen money from the family and tried to kill my great-granddad. Well, he was disowned. Good shit. And no one knew this entire time. Well, not that anyone would care. Happy that the nasty woman is out of our life. For good this time. Apparently, she died last year with no one by her side. TLDR, nasty teacher failed my dad for no reason. When my brother and I were in school, he got bullied by her. I made her regret it. Got her teaching license revoked, retirement benefits taken, destroyed her car, fractured her wrist, and she ended up getting diagnosed with cancer. Turned out to be a family member from down the line disowned long ago for an attempted murder, and she died alone. This is one of the most intense endings I've ever read that sounds like it comes straight out of an action movie. Not only does she have cancer, not only is she related, but she's part of the evil Branch family the whole time. Are you serious? This is a great, great story. By the way, I'm going to throw this out here real quick. Nicholas Fiend, it took me like half the story to realize what he's talking about. That's the user. The user is called Nicholas Fiend. So thanks for making that clear there, user. But I even Googled this. I Googled it. I was that confused. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. No bonus story. I mean, I'm sure you could see why this one story made this video last over 20 minutes long. We'll be going back to normal format tomorrow, but this was just a lot of fun of a story and had to put it out there. Alright, I'll see you later guys. Peace out.